So hi everyone, and welcome to our talk on purposeful impact today. My name is Mariana Peneva, and I'm part of the team behind our global sustainable transformation practice at Kantar. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by a true leader when it comes to positive impact. So I'm joined by Ynzo van Zanten from Chocolonely. So welcome, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start by your title. So your title is Chief Evangelist. So what does a Chief Evangelist do?
I tend to travel the world and the globe and beyond to talk about the cocoa industry, about chocolate, about Tony's Chocolonely, and mostly about the issues in the cocoa industry, namely the widespread problem of illegal child labor and how that reflects on the chocolate industry and how Tony's tries to change that industry from within to make sure that we eradicate all forms of illegal child labor and definitely modern slavery. So that is what I do as a chief evangelist. Also, by the way, I'm the only CEO in the company with my title. I'm the Chief Evangelist Officer, so that gets me into the cool CEO parties. That's another reason for that title.
Oh, that's great. So a few years ago in Kantar, we did a thought leadership piece on purpose and how brands can actually become purposeful. And we had two key insights out of that study. So one insight is that becoming purpose-led is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. So it's a really holistic transformation. The other insight we actually had from that research was that many brands are born good. So they really start in the end of the journey because that's why they're created and that's their intent from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more on why Tony's was founded and how?
Yeah, so we're definitely of the second category, as you mentioned. We never intended to become a chocolate company. We never intended to become an internationally available chocolate company. I mean, our bars are now sold in more than 30 countries in the world. The only thing we wanted to do was create awareness from within amongst chocolate lovers about the bitter reality in the cocoa industry. And when nobody was really paying attention and the big chocolate companies weren't really reacting to it or didn't even want to come on camera with us to talk about it, then we decided, let's become a chocolate company and change that industry from within. So our origins come from a Dutch television show, which is an investigative journalistic program, which looks at the reality behind some of the nonsense in food marketing. And they ran into a tiny article on page 12 of a newspaper that spoke about child slaves being traded for the cocoa industry in Mali back then. And they were like, what? How can this not be front page news? How can so little people know about this when we consume chocolate every day? And that was the very, very start of the idea of our company. And then they wanted to interview people in their television show, but none of the big players wanted to speak to them. So that is when they said, right, let's launch our own chocolate company, Tony's Chocolonely, to create awareness, show the industry from within that chocolate can be made in a different way, in a more sustainable way, a more social way. And lastly, to inspire the rest of the industry to simply follow suit, to start doing what we're doing as well.
Wonderful. And what was the tipping point of your success? Obviously, you started like this as a challenger in the category. I think now you're the #1 brand in the Netherlands in retail. You're growing globally as well. What was the tipping point of your success?
I think the tipping point came when we realized that making impact and being financially successful aren't mutually exclusive, aren't two ends of one spectrum, aren't one or the other. But when you realize that you can really combine financial success, commercial success, with making an impact, and one comes through the other, because we're convinced that we can make the most impact if we grow the fastest and we simply make the biggest dent in the industry. And at the same time, we're convinced that our financial success comes from the fact that we make so much impact. So consumers want to be part of this movement as a force for good. So by realizing that they aren't two ends of one spectrum, but they are one and the same, and they can synergize in the middle, that is, I think, when our success really came to life, which was about, I would say, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, when we skyrocketed and are now this year reaching 100 million revenue.
Wonderful. And can you talk about how you measure your success when you talk about your annual report?
Yeah, so there's a couple of answers possible there. I was in this panel discussion with a very bright lady a couple of years ago, and she mentioned something that has stuck with me since then. And she said, should it be measurable or should it be noticeable? The impact that you make. And I strongly believe in the noticeability, right? There's also unmeasurable stuff that has changed in Western Africa with the farms that we work with, which is simply taking pride in their work again, and feeling happy about what they're doing in that industry. But at the same time, we also need to put our money where our mouth is, and show the impact that we make. So we have system for that in place. We have a bean tracker system that we build ourselves, which creates full traceability of the cocoa beans, so really bean to bar for us. There's also the social side of measuring, which we do through the child labor monitoring and remediation system. So that's the CLMRS that we've implemented together with Nestle, for example, through the International Cocoa Initiative, amongst all the 7 cooperatives that we work with, which really makes sure that we can measure all the incidents that we run into, trace those incidents, make sure that we can remediate those incidents of child labor, and really have accountability on that part as well. And then, indeed, as you said, we all report on that in our annual fair report, in which we not only have financial KPIs that are audited by PwC, but also non-financial KPIs. So, for example, tonnage of traceable cocoa beans, the amount of farmers that we work with, the amount of serious friends that we've gathered. And this is what we show in our annual fair report, where we show the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, no, wonderful. So I think you're a great example of how actually business can have a positive impact in the world and move forward with the global sustainability agenda. How do you see, in a broader sense, how would you see the role of business in that in general?
I see them as essential. Even when I was a professor at university, I said, I think the only powers that are strong enough to get us out of the pile of shit that we managed to get ourselves in are the powers that got us there. And those are commercial powers. Even though in the last 1.5, 2 years during the pandemic, I really started also changing my opinion about the lack of power that a government has, or should I say, could have, because time and time again they show that they don't really create the environment that we should be operating in. But I do believe a government has a certain power, but they set the playing field. And I think it's amongst the commercial companies and the entrepreneurs to make sure that within that playing field, we make sure that a new type of capitalism, a new type of doing business becomes the norm in doing business, which really is indeed purpose-led, whether you call it purpose economy, the why, the mission. I think we need to all realize that we contribute to the planet that we operate on and the society that we operate in, and therefore have a moral obligation to do something right with that financial success within that environment.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really. So who inspires you? Because I think you are inspiration for many of our clients. Everybody gives Tony's Chocolonely as an example of a company doing great in that area. Who inspires you?
Kind of depends the moment of the day that you ask me. I mean, there's a couple of straightforward answers that I could give, because in terms of brands and companies, obviously I'm a huge fan of all B Corps, and within all the B Corps, I would say Patagonia for me is the most inspiring. Really, an activist brand that really remains so strong and true to what they believe in. But at the same time, there's also tiny specks of marbles and shining stars at the horizon. Former students of mine who chose not to become part of that commercial system, but after studying and having impressive jobs, became artists and are now painters. Right? Those are the people that really inspire me at the same time as well.
Yeah, sounds great. And then I have one final conversation. So hopefully we're going to have a lot of business, brand, and sustainability leaders watching this. So what would be your advice to them? What should they do?
Well, first of all, I would say it's almost pretentious for me to have any sort of advice, because I know very little and I do what I do within the chocolate industry. But I think a couple of clear lessons coming out of Tony's Chocolonely and other brands that I've worked at and with would be really to having a ridiculous focus, right? I mean, I think the power of Tony's comes from such a strong focus on our mission, 100% slave-free chocolate. So everything we do is really led by this moral compass of that one sentence of 100% slave-free chocolate, not just our chocolate, but all chocolate worldwide. And that by sentence leads us to realize also that compass isn't just about us. It's about really how to inspire the rest of the industry. So that is focus on mission. The second would be, in our case, focus on product. We're faced with amazing opportunities each and every day. Merchandising, clothing, chocolate paste, chocolate sprinkles, B2B chocolate. But we're so focused on essentially only 3 products: big bars, smaller bars, and tiny chocolates by the coffee. That's it. And within those bars, we create craziest recipes and taste, but it's focused on that product: chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. Why? Because chocolate makes the biggest impact in terms of cocoa in the value chain of cocoa. All the other products would have a lower cocoa count and therefore would help those farmers in Western Africa to a lesser extent. And then the third, but probably, in my opinion, the most important, would be focus on the people that you do this with, the people that you want to reach that mission with, which is our team. So we have a strong focus on building the most amazing, inspired, and motivated and engaged team to make working on a serious subject fun each and every day. And realize that we have a role to play there and also responsibility as an employer to those people. So focus, focus, focus.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been a really inspirational conversation. I hope also the people watching this video are just as inspired as I am by your story. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this story with the people watching right now as well.